We welcome you to another Sunday School lesson. Sunday School is a gift from God. To be faithful as a Christian in evil times, you must learn to stand alone. You will repeatedly face pressure to violate your Christian standards and go along with the crowd. Christian adults face constant pressure to compromise their faith. At work, the boss expects you not to be totally honest in dealing with customers. On a business trip, your associates are all going to enjoy the nightlife and want you to join them. At family gatherings over the holidays, the rest of the family are gossiping about another family member. They're telling off-color jokes. What do? No one likes to be ridiculed or rejected. We all want to be liked, and included. We don't want others to think that Christians are a bunch of prudes who can't enjoy life. So we're easily tempted to go along with the crowd rather than to stand alone for Jesus Christ. But if we yield, we dishonor God and lose our distinctive witness for our Savior. There is probably no greater example of a man who stood alone with God in evil times than Noah. God, who sees the heart of every person, saw it fit to save only Noah and his family. All others perished in the flood. Think of what it would be like to be the only godly family on earth. Noah's life teaches us that to stand alone in an evil day we must walk with God. It is the secret of standing alone that we hope to learn in today's lesson. Our first verse states that Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Genesis 6:9 marks the beginning of the flood narrative, and it is here that we learn the most about Noah's life. One can almost see a progression of spirituality in this description of Noah's life. By saying Noah was righteous, we know that he was obedient to God's commands, as best as he was able and understood them at that time. He was blameless in his generation, standing out among the people of his day. While they were indulged in excessive sexual pleasures, Noah was living an exemplary life. Finally, Noah walked with God, which puts him in the same class as his great-grandfather, Enoch, Genesis 5:24. This implies not only an obedient life, but one that has a vibrant, close, harmonious and intimate relationship with God. Verse 10 says, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. He was 500 years of age then, and that was before the flood came. The earth was so wicked as described next. Verse 11 says, Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. People were corrupt in the worship of God, worshipped the created more, or besides the Creator. They were corrupt in their manners and dealings with one another, guilty of fornication and adultery, and other crimes. They committed these openly and shamelessly, without any fear of God. The earth was filled with violence, with oppression and cruelty, by tyrannical decrees and unrighteous judgments. In the absence of any well-regulated government, it is easy to imagine what evils would arise. Men did what was right in their own eyes, and, having no fear of God, destruction and misery were in their ways. Verse 12 says, God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. All men, except Noah, who were flesh, carnal and unregenerate persons, had corrupted the way of God, the true religion, with their idolatries. They had corrupted their own way, their manners, their life with their uncleanness and wickedness of various sorts. The children of Seth and of Cain worshipped idols, everyone as he pleased, and were immersed in wickedness, and gave their right hands to each other, and joined in fellowship in committing sin and vice. In the times of Noah, none were holy except he and his wife, and his 3 sons and their wives. All mixed with the daughters of Cain, and were immersed in sins, and worshipped strange gods, and so the earth was corrupted and filled with lasciviousness. Verse 13 says, So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Not only the human race was to be destroyed, but the earth's surface, and all terrestrial animals, that is those which could not live in water. These must be destroyed when the whole surface of the earth was drowned. Destroying the earth may probably mean the alteration of its composition. I will destroy them with the earth, meaning, that God would destroy all men, together with the cattle and creeping things of the earth, the trees, and herbs, and plants in it, all that will perish in the flood, that they should be no more on it. Verse 14 says, So make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. Make an ark, not called a ship, for it was not for sailing to any distance, only for floating and carrying big load. Made of cypress wood, very durable and incorruptible, and fit for shipping. Make for your use and benefit, for saving yourself and family, as well as for the preservation of the several creatures which were for the service of him and his posterity. Rooms shall be made in the ark, and many of them for the several creatures, and for their provisions, as well as for Noah and his family. Pitch it inside out with a spalt to keep out the waters, and that they might more easily slide off, and to preserve the ark from being eaten by worms, as well as for the better security of the ark. Others think Noah was building it the whole 120 years, the time of God's long-suffering and forbearance. Verse 15 says, This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide and 30 cubits high. It was a just and regular proportion, the length being 6 times more than the breadth, and 10 times more than the height. There is enough space for all the kinds of living creatures and their provisions, which was to be put into the ark. This would make the ark 525 feet long, 87.5 feet wide, and 52.5 feet high. Experiments made in Holland and Denmark show that vessels built on this model are admirably adapted to freight, though, of course, unfit for fast speed through the water. 16. Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. Make a window to give light to all the creatures. A window will be used to look out occasionally and afterwards to be opened by Noah, to send the raven and the dove, to scout the environment. The door of the ark shall be set at the side. Lower, second, and third stories shall be made. The lower story is for the beasts, the second for the birds, and the third for Noah and his children. This distribution places the beasts in the lower story, and the birds with Noah and his family in the uppermost, and the provisions for all in the middle. This allocation of space was meant to facilitate distribution of food, management of health and waste. Verse 17 says, I am going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish. God will destroy all flesh, every living creature, men and women, the beasts and cattle of the earth, and every creeping thing on it, and the fowls of the heaven, man principally, and these for his sake. And everything that is in the earth shall die, but not what was in the waters, the fishes of the sea, which could live in the flood. Verse 18 says, But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Made with Noah at this time, though not expressed, that on his making an ark, as God directed him, and going into it at his command, he would preserve him while building it from the rage of wicked men, and save him in it and his family, when the flood should come. And that they should come safe out of it, and repeople the world, which should be no more destroyed by anyone. Verse 19 says, You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. God might have destroyed all the animal creation, and created others to occupy the new world, but he chose rather to preserve those already created. The Creator and Preserver of the universe does nothing but what is essentially necessary to be done. Nothing should be wasted, nor should power or skill be spent where no necessity exists. Yet it is more cost-effective to preserve the old than to have created new ones. God respects the work of his hands, that nothing but what is essential to the credit of his justice and holiness shall ever induce him to destroy anything he has made. 2 of each variety were to be brought, that they might preserve their species. They shall be male and female, not any two, but one male and one female, for the purpose of reproduction. Verse 20 says, two of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. The providence of God directs and compels the creatures to come to Noah. There was no need for Noah to take any pains or exert effort by hunting or hawking to get such a number together. Two of every sort were to come to the ark, to be preserved alive there, that they might propagate their species. So that swine, and horses, and lions, and serpents, and all other creatures which were on the earth, entered into the ark by pairs in an orderly fashion. Verse 21 says, you are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. Noah shall gather food provisions for man and beast and laid properly organized in the ark. Gather food for you, and for the animals during the flood, in sufficient quantity for everybody. There was room enough in the ark, to put food for them all during the time the flood was on the earth. Our last verse says, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. He prepared the ark, and during 120 years preached righteousness to that sinful generation. The people in Noah's time are represented as shut in prison, arrested and condemned by God's justice, but graciously allowed the space of 120 years to repent in. This respite was an act of great mercy, and no doubt thousands availed themselves of it, and believed their souls were saved before they died before the flood. But the great majority of the people did not, else the flood had never come. Key verse. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Our lesson details the circumstances in which Noah was placed. These very same things defines also the obedience required of us. The danger to which we are exposed is similar. The means provided for our escape are similar. The distinction that will be made between the believing-unbelieving world will be similar. Noah through his life added a new definition of faith. Faith does not argue, but to only believe God. And the right response to fear is necessary. We hold fast the more lesson on why and how Noah was saved. 1. The story teaches us the truth that God is watching. Let none of us think that God does not see us. If we are struggling in evil surroundings to be good, He knows it all. No Noah can ever be hidden from the gaze of Him whose eyes go to and fro upon the earth. 2. Again, it teaches us that we are saved by faith. The skies were not dark when the first beams were laid. There was no murmur of uprising waters. Do you not think that people laughed at Noah? Noah was saved through grace, and that not of himself, it was the gift of God. He had nothing but God's bare word to hold to, but he held to it, though everybody mocked, and he found at last how wise it had been to walk by faith and not by sight. 3. God saves by separating. Let us never forget the care and the love and the patience wherewith God separated Noah from the world. The thought of the ark and the plan of the ark were God's. It was God who gave Noah strength to do the work. And at last, when all was ready for the voyaging, we read that it was God who shut them in. Did Noah grumble at his loss of liberty? He draws us apart, he saves by separation. 4. Then, lastly, it teaches us that God saves for service. It was for the world's sake that Noah was brought through. He was preserved that mankind might start again, and so was he a forerunner of the second Adam. God never saves us merely to enjoy. God saves us that we may do His will. Our thought to remember. God protects the righteous at all times. Noah's faith triumphed over all corrupt reasonings. To build so large an ark, never seen before, and to provide food for the living creatures, would require from him a great deal of care and labor and expense. Noah, by faith, got over, his obedience was ready and resolute. Having begun to build, he did not leave off till he had finished, so did he, and so must we do. Our lesson next week is entitled, The Birth of the Promised Son. Our biblical reference is Genesis 18:9-15. We are truly glad you spent time to learn this week's lesson with us. We hope you are blessed and may share these with somebody else. We wish you can join us at the Cubao Church of Christ soon. Our congregation is a place to discover faith, find new friends, grow closer relationship with Christ and serve with each other's gifts. Thank you very much, have a great week, and God bless you always, dear brothers and sisters.